Testing.
We'll call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. and it's nice to see everybody back. This is the first time we've had our entire council together in the last 3 months. I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on March 8th, 2021 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Knox. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have no delegations this evening, so we'll move right into public hearings. First public hearing is for this is second and third reading of bylaw 21-8718. This is for VS Properties, 51 Tupper Street. This is zoning amendment PC 1-21. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Kristen, could you take the podium and just state your name for the record, please?
My name's Kristen, and I'm the rep from VS Properties.
Okay.
Last name Klein, K-L-Y-N-E.
And did you want to present or just answer questions from
I
council?
can just answer questions. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I'll open it up to council. Are there any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions from council. Thank you for making yourself available.
No problem. Thank you.
Need a motion to close the public hearing?
Be it resolved, and I so move, that the public hearing for bylaw 21-8718 for VS Properties, 51 Tupper Street, zoning amendment PC 121 now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, council, you'll see before you from the Planning Economic Development Committee for file number PC 1-21, the applicant known as VS Properties Inc. And the issue is for the second and the third reading to rezone the property from C2 Central Commercial Zone to R3 Multiple Family Zone. The alternatives, as per the Planning Act and considering results of the public meeting, within 90 days, council must choose one of the three actions to deal with. And we've gone through that already. So the background is the property in question, lots 114/116 Plan 12 in the parish of Portage la Prairie is presently zoned C2 or Central Commercial Zone. The applicants VS Properties, of course, Inc. wish to rezone this property to an R3 multiple family zone. The Portage la Prairie Development Plan policy does state that for the use of the downtown corridor use, the residential use, the neighborhood area interference, all fits into within those categories. The application has been circulated to various city departments with no concerns being expressed. And as required, the application had been advertised in the Daily Graphic for 2 consecutive weeks, been circulated to the province, and then notices have been sent to all owners of property within a 100-meter radius of the proposed development as per Section 168 of the Planning Act. Our first reading of the bylaw was given on January 25th, 2021 to begin the process. Now, as of this writing, we have not received written objections to the proposed rezoning scheme, and then the documents were then circulated to provincial departments and agencies with no objections as well. Provincial Planning recommended approval of zoning bylaw amendment number 21-8718. There are a couple of sketches there as well, which were the same as what they were presented back at the original ask. So it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the application to rezone the land known as 51 Tupper Street South and legally described as lots 114, 116, Plan 12 in the parish of Portage la Prairie from C2 or Central Commercial Zone to R3 Multiple Family Zone, and that bylaw number 21-8718 now be read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And I so move that the bylaw number 21-878 be read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Counselor Meyer and seconded by Counselor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for variation PC 10-21. This is for Worthington at 138 Saskatchewan Avenue East. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Okay, I need a motion to close the hearing, please.
Be it resolved, and I so move that the public hearing for variation PC 1021 for Worthington, 138 Saskatchewan Avenue East now be closed.
Moved by Counselor Meyer and seconded by Counselor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, Council, in front of you, you've got a report. There's also a couple of sketches that will reference the property at 138 Saskatchewan Avenue West. Open up here for a second. There we go. Oops. So from the Planning and Economic Development Committee for file number PC 10-21, it's a request for variation for the applicant of Mike Worthington. So the issue, he wants to take 8 parking stalls to be reduced to 2 based on the total floor area of the existing building. Our alternatives at this time are to approve the variation application as presented or to deny the variation application. So some of the background, the applicant, Mike Worthington, is applying for a variation order to allow the required 8 parking stalls to be reduced to 2 parking stalls based on the total floor area of the existing building. The applicant wishes to open a restaurant. So as per the city's zoning bylaw, parking stalls are to be calculated at a rate of 1 for every 4 seats, or 1 per every 23.2 square meters of floor area, whichever is greater. So in this case, the floor area is greater, so parking stalls are required, but only 2 are available at this site. In the past, City Council has approved similar requests, and the minute references are there for your reference as well. The building is in a C2 central commercial zone. The application has been circulated to various city departments and there have been no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius and there have been no objections. So it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Mike Worthington to vary the required 8 parking stalls to be reduced to 2 parking stalls based on the total floor area of the existing building at the property known as 138 Saskatchewan Avenue East, which is legally described as Lot 19, Plan 1026, Parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Counselor Meyer and seconded by Counselor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? Counselor Knox?
Through your worship to probably Mr. Brooks, maybe? I'm just curious that I take with the location that there's enough parking on Saskatchewan Avenue for patrons if it was going to be a restaurant?
Perhaps I can answer for Mr. Brooks as he's just in the other room. The number of parking would normally be higher. They do have 2 spots behind. The idea, yes, you're right, Saskatchewan Avenue now has metered-free parking for 2 hours, which would be adaptable for people who are going to a restaurant use. And there's also consideration among other restaurants that we have along Saskatchewan Avenue that have similar parking needs.
Thank you.
Any, Counselor Wall?
Just wanted to comment that that location was a restaurant for many, many years. There was no issue.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll move into committees. First up is Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Other than some new business down below, at this point, the City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Community Service Committee. Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you. And our Youth Councillor, Councillor Houle, did you have anything to report tonight? Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Yes, Your Worship. At committee, at the last meeting, we brought forward the reports from the wastewater division and the water treatment division. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at them. They're very detailed reports on wastewater and water treatment over the past year with a lot of graphs and detail. And these require passing by city council before they can be forwarded to the province. So, first of all, the wastewater treatment division, be it resolved that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie accept the wastewater treatment division annual report as presented and authorize the submission to Manitoba Conservation and Climate as well as posting to the city's website. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And then the water treatment division, be it resolved that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie accept the 2020 Public Water System Annual Report and the 2020 Water Treatment Plant Annual Data Report and forward the same to the Manitoba Sustainable Development Office of Drinking Water and authorize administration to post the reports on the city website, and I so move. Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions, comments on this motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
That's all I have to report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Councillor Knox, Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from your Public Safety Committee this evening.
Thank you. We have no deferred business. However, we have a number of items of new business. First item is the PRRA Safety Officer Funding Agreement, and this is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the item here for council's consideration is to approve the safety officer funding agreement with the PRRA. And so some of the background here is we've always had a safety officer since 2015 here at the city, but the PRRA had shared a percentage of its cost, the role's cost. And it did start out with 4 days. Over the years, that's gone up to 5 and as much as 6 days, and then offsetting with a percentage of the salary costs. We'd like to renew that agreement with the PRA, but the PRA would like to take that agreement back down to 5 days and pay 25% of the safety officer's salary. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the safety officer funding agreement with the Portage Regional Recreation Authority for a 3-year term beginning April 1st, 2021 and ending March 31st, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business is the subdivision for McCain for McMillan Industrial Park Lift Station. And this is Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, what we're here to look at is the report. Is to consider the application to subdivide 0.12 acres from the present holdings of 27.2 acres. On behalf of the City of Portage la Prairie, McCain Foods Limited. Just want to go back here. So there is a subdivision map there for your reference that shows the area that we're talking about. And as always, we can approve the application, we can amend the proposed plan of the subdivision, or we can deny the application. So the background is the applicant, which is the City of Portage la Prairie, but on behalf of McCain Foods Limited, proposes to subdivide 0.12 acres from the existing 27.2 acres. The intent of the subdivision is to allow the City of the Portage la Prairie to purchase and then assume the operation and maintenance of the McMillan Industrial Park Lift Station that is currently owned by McCain Foods Limited. So the applicant is the application is consistent with the development plan. It meets the provincial criteria for a minor subdivision. This enables it to be fast-tracked and given conditional approval without requiring an interdepartmental circulation or planning report, as required in the Section 125(1) of the Planning Act. Council approval is required prior to completing other conditions in the subdivision process. So some of the conditions are from the community and regional planning is that there must be written confirmation from Manitoba Hydro that an easement agreement has been entered or that an easement is not required. There must be written confirmation from Bell MTS that a right-of-way agreement has been entered or that an easement is not required. And confirmation that a variation order has been approved to vary the minimum site area from 10,000 square feet to 5,227 square feet in the M2 zone. So it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the subdivision of Lot 1, Block 1, Plan 1777, PLTO in RL 68 and 69, Parish of Portage la Prairie into a 0.12 acre lot from the present holdings of 27.07 acres, owned by McCain Foods Limited, to purchase and operate the McMillan Industrial Park lift station, subject to the conditions above that we talked about, to those conditions being met. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business is the February 2021 building reports. This is for information, and this is planning and economic development. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. As usual, Council, you're presented with the February 2021 building report, both for the city and the rural. But as usual, we look at it and address it from a regional perspective, so I'd like to draw your attention to the 2021 combined building report. You're going to see that the values are slightly down from where they were this year or last year at this time. Permits are somewhat similar, but certainly don't let those numbers fool you. I know that there's a lot of action and a lot of activity continuing to go on. So with that said, you're going to notice that there's not a lot of new. Most of it has been some of the repair is probably the biggest dollar value attached to it. And that's really about it. If there's any questions.
No questions? Thank you, Councillor Meyer.
And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Next item of new business is the award tender for supply of 3 4x4 half-ton trucks. And this is Transportation Committee. Councillor Espy, please.
Your Worship, if I could recuse myself for this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The issue is to award the supply of 3 4x4 half-ton trucks. And the analysis is the tender was advertised in the city website as well as Merck's. 5 companies were contacted, and we received 4 bids from 4 companies. The tender closed March 11th, 2021. These trucks will be used to replace the older existing vehicles that have aged out past the 10-year period. 3 of the 4 trucks met with all the specifications requested, except from Dunn Chrysler. Their unit submitted is under minimum horsepower specification. The budgeted amount from approved capital for this purchase is $117,000, including taxes. Craig Dunn's bid price of $112,492, net of GST for 3 trucks, met with all the specifications asked for, and is approximately $4,500 under budget. They also had the highest point ratio with sustainability factors taken into consideration with pricing. The table will show the other bids that came in, with Craig Dunn Motor City being the highest. It is the administrative recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the tender for the supply of 3 4x4 half-ton pickup trucks as specified in tender 21 OPS 013 to Craig Dunn Motor City for the tendered price of $118,116.60, including taxes, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And that concludes our agenda for council. So council is adjourned at 6:19 p.m. and we'll move right into committee. We'll call committee to order at 6:20 p.m. First up is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning Economic Development Committee has nothing on tonight.
Thank you. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Waterworks Committee has nothing to report, but I did have a call from a couple of citizens over in the new subdivision off Meehan Avenue about the color of the water. Recently, they tell me that there's a pink-colored ring left in their toilets. I've actually noticed the same thing at my place on Island Park recently. I don't know if there's anyone here who can answer that. The only pink chemical that I know of used at the water treatment plant was potassium permanganate, and a few years ago we had an incident where that went a little wild and we had pink water throughout the city. But this is just on the bottom of shower curtains, in the bottom of the toilet, and so on.
Okay.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Wall, I'll ask our Director of the Utility, Ms. Friesen, to speak to that.
So I don't have an exact answer for you. I do agree it is likely from the potassium permanganate, but I can check with the water plant and get back to you. There haven't been any reports of any incidents or releases that have been over the last while, so I'm uncertain, but I can definitely look into that and get back to you guys.
Oh, I'd appreciate it. One of these people is a doctor who said that she was familiar with a pink substance like that she learned about in medical school that was caused by a bacteria. And I said her water is tested on a regular basis. It's safe to drink, and we'd look into what the pink.
Yeah, absolutely. I just checked some of our bacteria testing today, and there would be nothing to indicate that unless it was occurring in their home. But it wouldn't be from the water source, no.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Wall?
That's everything I have, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Public Safety Committee has nothing this evening.
Thank you. That completes our agenda for committee. So a committee is adjourned at 6:23 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.